I used to complain all the time that he had no time for me and that he didn't prioritize me. Every little thing he did, work, gym, going to IKEA, I basically was afraid of hearing about his day. Everything he did made me feel abandoned. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel where I share with you the things I've learned from my own journey and practical manifesting tips so that you could be a doer, start applying, and live your best life. Today, we are going to go over one of the most iconic lectures from Neville Goddard, No One to Change But Self. So I am going to pick a few quotes from this lecture. We're going to go over them together. I am going to break them down for you in a digestible way. I am also going to share a personal example at the end of this video, so please watch all the way until the end. And by the end of this video, I promise you, you're going to feel empowered, you're going to feel in control, and you're going to feel relieved. And most importantly, you're going to be ready to apply. So without further ado, let's get started. The first quote goes like this. Consciousness is the one and only reality. We are incapable of seeing other than the contents of our own consciousness. Consciousness is the one and only reality. This is something that you hear a whole lot in the community. The way that I always like to explain this, we experience the world through our own stories and our own perspectives. Think about it. Even if, say, someone else tells you about their opinions on something, when you get to process that information and when it comes to you, it always goes through your filter, which is basically your perspective. You will never be able to experience any other perspective and story other than that of your own. An alternative to consciousness could be awareness. Think of the word awareness. Whenever you are aware of, say, a circumstance, ask yourself, who is aware of this? I am. Who is aware of the thought that you think you're thinking? I am. Who is aware of the thing that is bothering you? I am. This practice is called self-inquiry. It's very helpful. Personally, this is how I do my I am meditations. And when you do this for long enough, say a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, what you're going to start to not only understand, but experience is this. There is only one thing behind everything, behind all of this. One thing. And that is the I am. And the I am is your true identity. Now, going back to the same quote, the second part of it, which is actually the part that I would like to highlight. We're incapable of seeing other than the contents of our own consciousness. Now, the part that I would like to highlight is one word, seeing. We're incapable of seeing other than the contents of our own consciousness. What does seeing here imply? The seeing here implies perspectives, perception. We are incapable of experiencing anything other than our perception, other than the way that we see things. Notice the way he never said anything about circumstances. A lot of times people change the way they see things, they change themselves, hoping that they are never going to experience any unlovely circumstances anymore. That is never implied here. Circumstances exist as neutral props. We experience them with, again, our own perspectives, the way that we perceive them, our stories. Focusing on changing circumstances, trying to change yourself so that circumstances could change, is unproductive. Quote number 2. I need to change no man. I sanctify myself and in doing so, I sanctify others. To the pure, all things are pure. There is nothing in itself unclean, but you, by your concept of self, see things either clean or unclean. Now here he is basically explaining what I've just explained. There is nothing in itself unclean. There is no circumstance in itself bad. But you, by your concept of self, see things either as clean or unclean. Your perception of circumstances comes from your concept of self, the way you see yourself in relation to the circumstances. And from there, you perceive things as good or bad, positive or negative, and that makes up your experience of this world. Quote number 3. Instead of trying to change others through argument and force, let me but ascend in consciousness to a higher level, and I will automatically change others by changing self. There is no one to change but self. That self is simply your awareness, your consciousness, and the world in which it lives is determined by the concept you hold of self. It is to consciousness that we must turn as to the only reality. For there is no clear conception of the origin of phenomena except that consciousness is all, and all is consciousness. This is such a powerful paragraph here. Instead of trying to change others through argument and force, first of all, what I want to point out here is that the argument here includes mental arguments. And the force here could also mean mental force, such as robotically affirming 24/7, frantically flipping thoughts, vigorous routine to the point where you cannot live your life. Those are all force. Don't for a second think that just because you're not taking action in the 3D reality that you're not asserting force. Another very important detail here that I have to point out. Notice how Neville says the self is simply your awareness. The self here is not referring to your human suit. It's not this little human that you think that you are. That is just a manifestation of the self. That is not who you truly are. What we're changing here is the portion of the consciousness, which is the self. We're just changing the portion of the self that we are choosing to experience. That's ultimately what manifesting is all about. Manifesting is not the process of changing anything, because nothing could really be changed when you understand that all things exist within the self, the consciousness. We're never changing, we're only choosing. We make choices by the perspectives that we choose to entertain, by the stories that we choose to tell ourselves, by the kind of things that we put our attention on. There's a reason why we say we pay attention. Attention is like the currency in manifestation. You pay attention to something, you get that experience back to you. So what if you don't want to experience something? You don't pay attention to it. You don't even resist it. You don't try to manifest it away. You just don't. You pay a no mind. The last quote that I have here. You are still in that state where you were before the world was. The only thing that has fallen is your concept of self. You see the broken parts which really are not broken. You are seeing them through distorted eyes, as though you were in one of those peculiar amusement galleries where a man walks before a mirror and he's elongated, yet he is the same man. Or he looks into another mirror and he is all big and fat. These things are seen today because man is what he is. Let me just repeat the part that I really want to highlight here. You see the broken parts which really are not broken. You are seeing them through distorted eyes. What does distorted eyes mean? It means the wrong perspective. You see the broken parts which really are not broken. You see the negative circumstances which really are not negative. You see them as negative because your perspectives are broken. Now, this is the moment when I want to share my personal example. So during the round 1 of my current relationship, I was so focused on what he was doing because I wanted him to make me feel a certain way. I wanted him to make me feel prioritized, important, yada yada, not realizing that I was not being the version of myself who was all of those things. I was this version of myself who expects abandonment, who expects to be on the bottom of someone's list, to the point that I just could not perceive any other possibility. So what did I do? Instead of looking within, I started to look for validation from circumstances, aka the man. And the more I forced, including mental force, like I said, the worse it got. I used to complain all the time that he had no time for me and that he didn't prioritize me. Every little thing he did, work, gym, going to IKEA, I basically was afraid of hearing about his day. Everything he did made me feel abandoned. Why? Because I just felt abandoned. I felt abandoned on my own. I just sort of pasted that feeling onto this situation and blamed it on the man. Now, the interesting thing was that when I would argue with him or confront him about things, and by the way, do not confronting someone hoping that they would change to make you feel better, that does not work. So when I would confront him about all of these things, he in turn got mad because he felt that it was unfair of me to tell him that despite all these efforts, he was not prioritizing me. I want to point out to you the fact that he got mad about me telling him that he was not prioritizing me. He was doing everything that he could to prioritize me and our relationship back then. He got mad because I just could not see his efforts. It went right over my head. Now, why did it go right over my head? Because I had distorted eyes. I was seeing him through distorted eyes. I have since, corrected my distorted eyes. And let me tell you this, it really is like he's always been this person who's caring, who's affectionate, who prioritizes our relationship, all of that. So I'll leave this one for you to sit on. You see the broken parts, which really are not broken. You're seeing them through distorted eyes. And if you're watching this video, you've made it here. You've also got the distorted eye syndrome. I want you to know there is always another perspective. Even if you cannot see it, even if you think that it's impossible, there is always another perspective. And if you have made it to the end, I just wanted to say thank you. If this video gave you an aha moment, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me spread the message and help more people. Comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions. And until next time, happy manifesting.